Okay, we're
because
back.
what's your face?
Yeah.
We're back. We're back. We covered some pretty interesting stuff that first segment. Now with us, Teaser Pony, Anthony Osso Jr. How's it going, Teaser Pony?
It's going great.
It's always fun
Better
to
now
bring
that I'm
you.
here.
Always fun to bring you on, Dan.
Best nickname in the business.
Best nickname in the
I've got
business.
my TP
Oh, nice,
Yeah,
nice.
on the
nice,
shirt today.
Nice.
Hell yeah!
So, somebody in one of the comments, because I was explaining Carry 156, some non sequitur about he thinks he's a douche, okay, and he doesn't like initials, but he brags about racing motorcycles, huh? I don't understand that.
Incomplete thought.
Incomplete thought.
It's
and
people.
most overrated lawyer in Houston. And, I really took offense to that because there's no way I'm the most overrated lawyer. There's got to be at least one other lawyer in the city of Houston that's more overrated than me. At least one.
I mean, all those fucking billboards of all those goddamn lawyers. There's got to be one. I mean, I see it all.
so.
But Teaser Pony, appreciate you joining us.
Yeah.
Dan got the nice little switch up in the fit, looking sharp. So I wanted to have Teaser Pony on for this segment because it's really interesting. All over Twitter, all over social media, there's clips and posts about ChatGPT and how it's no longer allowed to give either health or legal advice. So Dan, I wanted to has Teaser Pony on, and obviously you kind of talk a little bit about this. What are your thoughts? Like, have you had a chance to read into this?
No, but full disclosure, I've never used ChatGPT. I'm a Claude guy. My main man, Mark Lanier, was proselytizing for Claude, so I've used Claude. And Anthony will have his own views, but I've seen a distinct shift in client correspondence post-AI and pre-AI, and just every client we have will send us these, not every client, many clients that we have will send us these long 4 or 5 page emails that they couldn't have comprised with a gun to their head telling us how we should view things or what we should do or what we shouldn't do. And while I don't take offense to it because they're, it's their case, they want input. I get that. But what we have to explain on a daily basis is each case is its own case, and what ChatGPT or Claude or whomever tells you is probably not what we should be doing in this case. Those are good thoughts. We'll consider them, but I'll let Anthony explain his version.
No, I completely agree with Dan. You can get an answer from ChatGPT or Claude, and it's going to research everything and come up with some things that maybe aren't actually true. But in the end of the day, that doesn't always translate to practice, right? And what reality is like. So, you've got to, so looking at this restriction, I think it's good because at the end of the day, an actual lawyer is going to know a lot better than an AI device how to handle your case and your situation. So I think the restriction's good.
Yeah. So, there's ChatGPT, there's Claude, there's Grok, which is XAI, there's DeepSeek, there's Perplexity. There's a lot of these LLM
Look at
tools.
you go, AI boy.
Well, listen, my background is actually in technology, believe it or not, and I know that our consulting firm and the engineers who we hire pretty bright engineers. They were using Claude pretty heavily. Claude was a very popular one early, but they all kind of leapfrog each other every few months.
Is that right?
It always changes. Right now, ChatGPT is probably back on top. They're the ones with the biggest bankroll and really just a growing company, and the engineers, they pay them like crazy, and they're really sharp people. So you can't really go wrong. Once you get comfortable with one, it's the one you go with. But ChatGPT, again, it's always in the forefront of the news, and it's an interesting conversation. Like, do you feel like Teaser Pony, do you feel like it's made it easier working with clients because they have access to these tools, or do you think that it's just starting to overcomplicate having to work with them because they almost feel like they're experts because of this pocket professor that they have on them?
I think it cuts both ways. I think that you spend more time now convincing clients out of certain opinions than you probably would have before they had access to ChatGPT or these other AI platforms. But again, I use AI to an extent. I don't use it to generate or create material, but I do use it to refine, streamline, edit material that I've already drafted, or I use it to kind of get me started. But in the end of the day, you have to independently verify whether the information it's spitting out to you is actually true or not. Because if you come up with some law or find some law through ChatGPT, cite it in a brief to a judge, and that law doesn't exist, and you didn't take the time to check whether it existed or not, you're going to be in deep shit.
I mean, full disclosure, I use it all the time. Of
course.
I use it in preparing for these podcasts, right? Because it broadens my perspective, and I don't always agree with the suggestions or the statements, but it's certainly a positive implement in my daily life. What Anthony said, I think, is exactly right. Our clients tend to rely on it more than they should. And I think there's an innate ability or willingness of people to believe that they can act as their own advocate, right? It's different than being your own doctor. I think most people have the common sense to realize they shouldn't try to practice medicine on themselves. But that same sort of restriction doesn't hold true in the legal world, because everybody thinks, oh, I could do that. That's not that hard. And so it impacts. They don't take it with the grain of salt or the pound of salt that they should.
Yeah, I mean, these tools, they hallucinate. That's what it's called, which means they malfunction. They spit out the wrong information often. And it's because they're over inundated with all this information online that they're scraping and repurposing it for people when they're prompting the tools. So naturally, just leaning on a tool for legal advice or for any other advice that's pretty sensitive. Even we use it very, very often in our process. I program our episodes often using these tools, and it messes up often. Like I'll have it source what kind of information it's pulling and why. I'm like, hey, let's talk about recent topics, and I'll pull a topic from like 6 years ago. And it's like shit like that happens all the time. But it's a very interesting evolution. Dan, do you have any maybe advice for the viewers, for the audience, for potential clients on what a good way to use the tool is prior to, presenting information to you? Is there a way that they can better use it to make your lives a little easier?
I'm not sure I know enough about the various tools to tell them what to do, other than take it with a grain of salt and don't expect me to do everything that you cut and paste and send to me.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got a client that called here the other day and was upset because things weren't going at the rapid rate that she wanted them to go. And I get that. I understand that. But the pace of a case in Galveston is different than the pace of a case in Houston is different than the pace. And sometimes it's not about getting the result quick. It's about getting the right result. And if you push them, you should file this and you should ask for that. And we're trying to get your case dismissed. And that's kind of a nuanced game, to the extent that if we go in there and pound our fist on the table, their willingness to consider a dismissal kind of dissipates into the ether. So just slow your roll. I know it's not fast enough for you, but time is our friend. I mean, time is inevitably the friend of a defendant in a criminal case, so just let it evolve.
I've got a piece of advice that I think people should keep in mind when it comes to the law and legal researching their personal issues in these applications, is that just like a Google search, if your computer, your phone, or whatever device it is you're using to research on, and you're asking personal questions or personal facts about something that you've done, it's recording it. And a search of any of those devices can ultimately lead to evidence that can be used against you in a crime. So
don't ask Claude how to commit the perfect murder. It's just a bad idea.
Bad idea.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. So Dan, I wanted to move into the next segment, kind of talk about some things that you are familiar with that you do have the reps in, and get some teaser pony insight as well. But can you give us an idea of like hardest, state courts to win reputation wise and why?
I think, and Anthony can weigh in, I kind of in that area, the first being Georgetown. Georgetown is very conservative, very pro law enforcement. It's where Michael Morton, whom the Michael Morton Act was named after, who was wrongfully convicted of the murder of his wife. That happened in Georgetown. So
wow.
that's kind of the Mount Rushmore of aggressive juries. Montgomery County, right down the road in Conroe, they are extremely conservative. I know. I live there. I practice there. Brett Ligon, I guess he just stepped down. Who's a really good DA. But I guess he's running for AG. Is that the end game?
I think so.
And I like Brent, but they are just a little to the right of Attila Hunt. Collin County and Denton, the home of Ken Paxton and others. They are very, very conservative, very, very pro-prosecution. West Texas, Midland, Odessa, Lubbock, and I never know whether to call Lubbock West Texas or North. I mean, where is the difference between West Texas and North Texas? But all those conservative communities, Midland, Odessa, Lubbock, they're difficult. North Texas, Amarillo. I once had a change of venue from Lubbock to Amarillo, which what does that accomplish? Houston used to be a hotbed of convictions. Houston has become much more liberal in the past decade or so. Dallas used to be the same way 20 years ago, but I think the stalwarts of sort of the conservative mindset are still Georgetown, Montgomery, Collin County, West Texas, and North Texas.
Shout out to Collin County, born and raised. Love Collin County. But any war stories, anything from any of these courts specifically that you can potentially speak on?
Well, I mean, but I haven't been as far around in Texas as Dan has, just because of the amount of years I've been practicing. But yeah, I mean, as recently as this week, I was in court in Montgomery County. It was our first setting. Before I could even shake the prosecutor's hand, the probation officer had a violation report, and my client was in cuffs before I could even approach the judge. So
welcome to Moco.
Yeah, it was it took some groveling and some creative propositions to the judge to kind of get that worked out for him, but luckily we were able to get it done.
What a game that you guys have to play here.
He did walk out of the courtroom that day, so
that's good.
Anthony's going into custody this weekend. That's the downside.
That's the trade.
Dan, on the federal side, I would love to hear your breakdown of the different difficulties of the different regions.
Yeah, the reps will teach you that the Southern District of New York is again sort of the gold standard for aggressive prosecutions. Eastern District of Virginia, same thing. They famously coined the rocket docket phrase. Washington, D.C., very political. Southern District of Texas, where we are, is also very conservative. But what's interesting to me, Aaron, is like the Southern District of New York and the Eastern District of Virginia, while they are very, very pro-prosecution in difficult jurisdictions, the sentences out of the Eastern District of Virginia and D.C. and the Southern District of New York, if you go to trial and lose or if you plead guilty, they're not as severe as the Southern District, right? We hand out longer sentences here in the Southern District, or as severe of sentencing judges, I think, as there are, and that's kind of inconsistent because you think of, down in the South and genteel and some compassionate and empathetic, and I got two words for you, David Hittner. So we definitely can hand out some severe sentences down here in the Southern District.
I'm curious, the Southern District of New York, that's very like popular on the TV shows and the movies and whatnot. Is that right? Like,
absolutely.
And then there's the Eastern District of New York as well.
That's right.
Is that just not as high profile?
They're not as high profile. They're a very good district as well. But the interesting thing about the New York area as a whole, there's always been competition between the DA's office in Manhattan versus the Southern District of New York versus the Eastern District of New York. Everybody wants to indict the Epstein, or everybody wants to go after this one. So there's kind of this feeding frenzy on high-profile cases, and they're all good, aggressive places to prosecute for sure.
Super.
And we don't have that in Houston. To finish that thought. Anthony was in the DA's office for years here, for a few years at least. But there's rarely competition to go after a high-profile case between the U.S. Attorney's Office and the DA's office. I've never seen it.
State court prosecutors, they'll step aside. If they find out that somebody's being indicted and prosecuted federally for the same offense, they're going to just let the feds take the case.
Why do you think that is?
I think that they have greater resources when it comes to investigating cases, and I think that it's the system is designed more advantageously for the prosecution, and so there's a greater chance of conviction in federal court.
That makes sense. Dan, speak a little on relationships in the system and the significance of that.
Yeah. So look, one of the big differences between practicing in criminal court and practicing in civil court, we see the same people, right? If I'm trying a case or have a case against a prosecutor in the DA's office, the U.S. Attorney's office, I'm going to see them again at some point in the future. I just am. It's a smaller community. There are fewer people on the other side. On the other hand, on the civil court, you might try a case or have a case, one civil lawyer versus another. They might not ever speak that lawyer's name again because there's so many more lawyers in the pond. So it's important, I think, that you develop a relationship. You don't have to go drink with them and eat with them and go to their bachelor parties and all that. But I think your character and your integrity is arguably more important in the criminal side than the civil side, because if you lie, cheat, or steal, or if they lie, cheat, or steal, you're going to run into them again. You're going to remember that. And so I think that's obviously significant. As I mentioned earlier today, I like trying a case against a good prosecutor, and just to go there, and I want Anthony's input on this. The two best prosecutors I've ever faced, and there are other really good ones that I'm not going to list, but the best DA I've ever tried a case against was Bill Turner. Bill Turner was the district attorney in Bryan College Station for a generation. He was kind of a good old boy. He went to Texas Tech, and he'd all shucks you a little bit, and he would beat the shit out of you because he would try one case a year. And God bless you if the case he picked to try was your case, because he would work on nothing but that case for a year. He knew it cold, and he beat my ass like a rented mule once. But he did it gracefully, professionally, ethically, and I couldn't even get mad at the guy because it was just art, and it was respectful, and he just kicked my teeth in with a smile on, would kick me on the ground. Dan, do you need a hand up? I can help you up. It's all right. Really, really effective. The best federal court prosecutor I ever tried was a guy named Mike Atanasio. I think he's now head of Cooley's litigation. Cooley's a big deal firm in L.A. We called him a Halo Boy because he was fucking perfect. I mean, his hair was perfect. He was telegenic. He knew the cases. He knew the witnesses. He never slipped up. He annoyed the shit out of me because he was just that fucking good. And I called him Halo Boy because he never made a mistake. But again, Atanasio didn't lie. He didn't cheat. He didn't steal. He's gone on to have a stellar career in the free world. The dude was good. And I particularly want Anthony's input here. In Houston, and I'll alienate some other prosecutors when I nominate this guy, but I think the best trial lawyer they have in the Harris County DA's office is
John Jordan.
John Jordan. He's really, really good.
He's good.
He's very prepared. He's very thorough. He's telegenic. He pushes it right to where he should, but doesn't go over it. He's really good.
Yeah, he's the real deal.
Yeah,
he actually, he just tried a case against my dad, Ed McLeese, and Anna Funes Baker, and they got the conviction, they got the maximum sentence, but John's, he knows how to reach a jury, so he's good. Sarah Seeley is another good prosecutor in that office.
And what Teaser Pony attributes does a really strong prosecutor have that you could maybe share?
Well, in trial, there's different parts, right? There are prosecutors I respect greatly because they've got character and I trust them. But when it comes to, and I think that you have to have those in order to be a great trial prosecutor. But they're advocates, right? They know the facts of their case stone cold. They have met with the witnesses, and their witnesses are prepared for trial without telling their witnesses what to say. They've prepared them for what cross-examination could come from a lawyer like Dan. And the way they try their case, they don't, they object at the right times. They don't annoy the jury with too many objections. They let the defense try their case because they're confident that the facts in their case will bleed through. And then in openings and closings, they know how to use tone when tone's necessary and talk quietly when talking quietly is necessary. So it's just being a good advocate.
Sounds like what Dan, what you mentioned before, like the skills versus attributes, right? It sounds like a strong prosecutor has the skill of maybe being very prepared, but the attribute they possess is just like being relentless. Is that right? Or
you can overdo it by being relentless as a prosecutor. I would argue that it's easier to be a good prosecutor than it is easy to be a good defense lawyer, because they have the facts. Most of the time they have better facts. They've got people to investigate. They've got support. They've got templates. They've got a lot of judges lean their way. But a really, really good prosecutor like a John Jordan or a Mike Atanasio or a Bill Turner, they could go try a PI case. They could go try a contracts case. When you get to the level of being able to communicate with a jury effectively, competently, confidently, you can try whatever case you want, right?
Getting them to do what you want and tell them to do, and knowing they're going to do it.
But as I mentioned before, I don't know why I keep saying that, but I do. I think a jury will forgive a defense lawyer from going too far and being a little too zealous, where I don't think as a prosecutor you want to look like this is the best day of your life by putting some guy away for life, right? Yeah. You don't want to be perceived as the guy who goes out in the hall and high fives it after somebody. It shouldn't be Joe Friday, just the facts, ma'am, but it should be, hey, I don't like this any more than you do, but facts are facts, and sometimes we got to do the hard thing, right? Yeah. That's a skill.
Here's a question: do you feel like, this is just kind of off topic a little bit, but who's better dressed, a prosecutor or a defense attorney?
Prosecutors, unfortunately, these days. It used to be the other way around.
Yeah. You know, typically, I don't know. I've seen it both ways.
Have you?
But
you're over there more than me,
right? But all in all, I do think that the prosecutors they've got less leeway, right? Or at least they're supposed to. You should be wearing a navy, black, or charcoal suit with a red, navy, or conservative colored tie. They're not going to come in with the wild window pane or the pinstripes or the flashy gold watch. So they're a lot more contained in what they're typically they're a lot more contained in what they're wearing. However, I do think that the defense has oftentimes, they make a little bit more money. They have a little more room to splurge on nice suits and things like that. So I do see some very tastefully dressed defense attorneys. That being said, sometimes that can be taken overboard. I don't think trial is the time to showcase the pimp suit, except on rare occasions where it's been done successfully.
I like that. Speaking of defense attorneys, which both of you guys are, what is it that working with judges, like, what is that like as a defense attorney when it feels like maybe they're a little animus or just don't like you?
Well, I mean, I see it. I most commonly see it when I'm out of town, right? And I haven't tried a case in front of this particular federal judge or that particular judge, and I have a little bit of cachet, or they've had their clerk Google me, or they've had their clerk listen to this podcast.
Especially now, yeah.
Especially now. And it's not unusual for a federal judge to think, who doesn't know me, right? Who thinks, oh, this motherfucker here, he thinks he's special. Come on down to my courthouse in West Virginia. We're going to show you special, precious, right? So you get that vibe for sure. And, the first things, going back to the inevitable 5 things, the first thing, it's inevitable, right? At some point, you're going to be in front of a judge that's pro-prosecution, anti-you. So just get the fuck over it, right? You're not always going to be well received. Judges aren't going to I've never had a judge make me a cake or bake me a cookie, not one. Second, you're not there to be liked by the judge, right? You're there to handle your case. And so I don't want to say who cares about the judge, because they obviously have an influence or an impact, but that's not what you're there for. 3, you can't control what you can't control. So control what you can and move on. Most importantly, in my experience, except maybe one judge, that Anthony and I were in front of in a city a little north of here, sooner or later, if you're doing your job right, and it might take 2 or 3 days, it might take a couple of weeks if you're in a long, but sooner or later, if you're doing your job right, if you're prepared, if you're making the right objections, if you're doing the right thing, you're acting like a grown-up, a judge is going to finally say, you know what? Okay.
Yeah.
He's earned his spurs. Let him go. The last thing is I have been in situations where the judge never let his foot off my neck, was just on me the entire time. And in a short trial, the jury is going to hold that against you because a judge has more inherent credibility, authority, and all that. They're going to like the judge more than you. But in the long trial, if the judge keeps putting his foot on your neck, it's going to backfire. And I've gotten good results. I've gotten a mistrial in a case that I should have never gotten a mistrial in because the jury was pissed off that the judge never let off. I mean, he was on my neck the entire time. So I guess the point is, it's not always a bad thing if they do it long enough and aggressively enough. It can backfire.
Yeah. In that town a little north of here that Dan and I were in trial in, Dan, it was like having a third prosecutor on the bench when Dan would go to the podium and conduct any examination. So it was nice to come in and examine a witness after Dan because I'm unassuming, I look innocent. The judge I'm not a threat to him by any means. We're not competing at all. And so I was able to get away with a little more than maybe I should have, only because I followed up Dan, who walked in and they had history together.
Every third question, I would get out 2 questions. And by the third question, he was interrupting me every single time. I could not ask a third question.
How do you handle that? Like,
it's very frustrating.
Yeah.
If there was a way to handle this particular judge, I haven't found it out yet. The rules changed every day. What was hearsay on Tuesday was definitely not hearsay on Wednesday, which didn't have any relationship to what hearsay was on Thursday. And to his defense, or her, we don't want to say him. To that person's defense, I don't think they not only did that, they don't know the law, they don't know a law, right? So they just change it. And I don't think it's just me. I think any lawyer that they thought that the lawyer thought they were good, they were going to do that.
How do you handle frustration in a courtroom?
Not well. But the older I get, the better I handle it because I don't take it personally. But particularly when you're used to trying cases in front of good judges, and then you go in front of a judge that doesn't know Sikkim from Khmer or that wants to. The first 2 or 3 days of that are really, really rough, and you just got to breathe and say, once again, it's like the negative comments. They're projecting that it's their inadequacy. It's nothing I can do. So I just kind of plod through it.
And I'm curious, for both of you guys, like, how are judges, you guys are judged by your wins and losses, right? How are judges evaluated? Like, how does that work?
By the lawyers that try cases in their court. I mean, obviously in Harris County and in Texas, county and state court judges are voted on. So I think whether they're reelected is sort of a display, especially in smaller counties. That's a display of whether the general public thinks they're good judges. But in bigger cities where a lot of the citizens don't know the judges or very well, I think you can ask attorneys that practice in their courts on both the state side and the defense side, and get their take on it. That's the best way to find out, or rate a judge, if you will.
Yeah, and that's to me. Look, I have said before, on the whole, federal judges, I think, are better educated, better qualified, more objective, and even on the whole than some state court judges, right? Because I think state court judges are inevitably affected, or their rulings are affected because they run for election, right? So I've been in situations where a judge is screwing me solely because they think screwing me is going to aid them in a re-election, right? And I get that. I don't like it, but I get that. On the other hand, federal judges ain't up for re-election, right? So they are not accountable unless they commit an act of treason or felony on the bench. They're going to be there forever, and they damn well know that, right? So their level of give a shit about what a lawyer thinks of them is not very high on occasion. A very good federal judge, like a Keith Ellison or an Amos Mazant or Mazant in Sherman, or whomever. Those guys are just wonderful because they could be doing anything, right? Like Ellison, who I brag on frequently, Harvard, Yale, Rhodes Scholar, Supreme Court law clerk. He could be practicing law anywhere, doing anything. And the fact that he's devoted the last 25 years of his life, or whatever it is, to sit on the bench is because he wants to, right? And it matters to him, right? He's just spectacular. He doesn't always do what I want by any stretch of the imagination, but at the end of every hearing you're in front of in Judge Ellison, he will literally step down from the bench, shake the hand of every lawyer in his courtroom, sometimes even the defendant.
Absolutely.
And I've never seen that happen. And I'm not saying all judges should do that, but his level of respect and commitment to the profession isn't singular, but it's damn close.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. I love that. And on respect, you know, my dad, he always taught me to treat the janitor with the same level of energy as like the CEO of a company, right? You give them the same respect. You know, in the court, there's staff, there are clerks, there are bailiffs, there are reporters. Why is it important, Dan, for you to get along with them?
Yeah, I learned this really the first day I ever went to the state courthouse with Mr. Haynes, because we go over there, and again, Haynes is this iconic legend. The seas parted. I mean, he walked in the courthouse, and oh my God, that's right. Everybody the fandom was just silly. And Haynes would acknowledge the judge. He'd say, "Good morning, Your Honor. How are you?" and all that, and be professional and appropriate. But then he would go up to the probation officer. "Hey, Billy, how's it going, man? Is your daughter still selling the Girl Scout cookies?" Or, "Hey, John, the bailiff, how's your nephew? How was that baseball game?" Or, you know, and the clerk the same way. And we left, and I said, "Mr. Haynes, you barely gave the judges the time of day, but you're kissing the ring of the court staff, right?" And he goes, "You don't understand." And I'm like, "Well, obviously not. That's why I'm asking you." And he said, "Dude, the bailiffs can make or break you, because those are the people that are back in the jury room, and if they don't like you, all they have to say is, 'Old Haynes trying to spin that tail on you again, huh? He was doing the same thing 3 weeks ago.'" Or they're walking a juror to their car and say, "That Cogdell's just as full of shit now as he always was," right? And it's I don't want to say it's the little people, because they aren't the little people, but it ain't always the judges that have the impact on the jurors, right? And a clerk, if you piss off a clerk and you're trying to get a client out of jail that day, hey, they can lose that judge's order and make you come back the next day. The court reporter, if they want to fuck you on appeal, I missed that objection. I don't know. You never made that objection. So I think it's more important to be nice to the court staff.
Oh, yeah.
And the energy, you use that word a lot, Aaron, but it's true. The jury's going to sense that energy between you and the court staff. If a bailiff nods at you or smiles at you or lets your client have a drink of water, the jury's going to catch that, right? And it's all that stuff is very important.
This is all like the nuances that I find very fascinating. Do you have insight that you can share, Teaser Pony, in your experience being in the courtroom and working with these, like, you know, staff that people don't, pay?
Let me ask it a little differently. Do
Sure.
you treat court staff differently as a defense lawyer than you did as a prosecutor, or is it the same?
No, I treat them the same, and I treat them well, and I try to connect, especially in to piggyback off Dan's list, the coordinator, right? She is sort of the neck if the judge is the head. She's going to decide when your case is set, when your case is going to trial. So if Dan and I are set and we have dates that are around the holidays and we don't want to be around the holidays, well, if we were assholes to the coordinator, she could set us on December 15th, right? And no one wants to try a case, especially as a defense attorney, 2 weeks before, a week before Christmas. So, you really have to treat the court staff well, and you want to create a home court feel, right? You want it to feel like it's your venue.
Did your dad teach that to you? Did you just learn that through your experience? Did he?
No, he was like, but I mean, it's also, I enjoy the social element of the courthouse. So that was just kind of like innate.
Right.
But that was definitely something that was ingrained in me, was like, make friends with the coordinators, be great with the coordinators, be great with everybody in the court. And walking through court to court with my dad, it was kind of like what you had with Haynes, right? Just seeing him and how he was perceived by everybody. That's how you develop a reputation, but also, again, create like a home court feel and advantage. And I think that's important to draw. You want to feel like people are rooting you on.
Totally. Is there a lot of turnover in those positions? You always have to like kind of.
No, you'll see the same court coordinator case for 10 or 15 years, and same with clerks. And Anthony's point of a court coordinator, look, if you've got a busy day or if you've got something else going outside of the office and you can walk up to a coordinator and say, hey, I need a case reset, and they like you, they'll reset it. If you're an asshole, no, you got to wait in line and talk to the judge. You can be there for 2 hours waiting to talk to the judge, to mother may I get a permission, whether if you have a decent relationship with the coordinator. It's not always relationship driven, but it's if they respect you and they recognize you, it's a huge difference.
It's fascinating. Dan, what do I look like? Excuse me. What do I look for?
What do you look like?
What do I look like? What do I look like in here? What do I look for in co-counsel?
You know, what I look for in co-counsel is number one, experience, right? And they've either been a prosecutor or they've been a defense lawyer, but they've experienced live bullets at some point. They've been in the fire. If they don't have experience, real world experience, I certainly want somebody who at least wants more of that experience. I want somebody that's confident. I don't want somebody that's arrogant, but I want somebody that's confident. And I'm not going to say Anthony's right on the bubble there, but no. He's been, and he matches all these or meets all these. But I want somebody with a complementary skill set. They don't have to have the same skills, but I want them to either be weak where I'm or strong where I'm weak, or I mean, I've done this to Anthony 20 times, at least in the few cases that we've tried together to date, where if I'm not feeling in the moment or I don't think I've got the energy or whatever, I'll go in. I was gonna do the first 3 witnesses, and after the first one, I'll turn to Anthony and go, dude, take the next 2. I'm out. And he'll do it. And that's not fair to him, but Haynes did it to me, and it's good experience for him. So number 4, I want somebody that has kind of an unflappable or resilient approach, meaning you're going to get hit, right? And you got to act like it doesn't hurt, or at least be resilient enough to get off the floor after you've been hit.
What do you think about this?
I'm laughing at Dan's recognizing. I didn't think he'd actually put that, on the podcast. But yeah, there'll be times where we'll be halfway, and not on the pivotal, most serious witnesses, right? But there might be a witness where Dan's like, "You got this one, don't you?" And it's a bit of a test, but I appreciate the level of trust that he has in me, and also the opportunity. But what stands out is the resilience. You've got to be resilient because you get punched in the mouth. And when I was a prosecutor, that happened, but it happened a lot less than it happens on the defense side. And so you can't just stop because things aren't going your way. You've got to finish the job. So I think that's a really important factor.
So in those moments where Dan just like passes it off to you, that happens like in real time. Like that's just like that's.
Oh, it happens. It's like, you got this. I'm tired, or I'm not feeling it. And it's not, I hope, done out of laziness.
Of course.
No.
It's a situation where I don't think my energy, to use your word again, is where it needs to be, and he is. And I think, well, maybe the jury's kind of tired of my old ass. Maybe they want a prettier, younger face, or whatever. I'm being a little bit facetious, but the timing of it is fluid, and it's I think it's something that's why you have a co-counsel, right?
Yeah.
If you're getting wheel spin, get somebody with truck tires on, right?
Do you feel like you shape yourself in real time during the case? Teaser pony, like if maybe Dan is a little softer, like you go hard, or if he goes hard, you're going a little soft. Do you like work up a balance?
I think partly, but I think a lot of it is dependent on what witness you're examining and where you are with that witness, right? If Dan's going hard on a if you call back-to-back witnesses and Dan was going soft on a witness and then the next witness was a child witness, I'm not going to all of a sudden just start yelling at a kid because I need to sort of
Yin and yang, yeah.
What is the word? Juxtapose myself from Dan. I'm going to play it to the witness's kind of situation.
And one thing I've never seen Anthony do, thankfully for both of us, is I've been in situations before where I've had a younger lawyer obviously mimic me, right? It's just like, dude, no. If I'm getting all emotional and wrought up and over, it's like, don't try to be me. It just makes both of us look worse, right? And we have different approaches and different personality points, and that's for a reason. And a lot of lawyers surround themselves with sycophants. Oh, you're the greatest thing ever, boss. I just love sitting next to you.
Yes, man.
Yes, may I have another? He's not that. He's respectful and appropriate, but he'll say maybe we should do it this way or maybe, and I would do the same to him. So it's important to have some contrast in styles and approaches for sure.
You gotta like the person you're sitting in trial with.
Totally.
Yeah.
We spend a lot of time, especially on our out of town cases, where we can be in hotel rooms adjacent to each other.
Separate hotel rooms. Get that
I
clear.
said rooms. I said plural.
Man, if I was co-counsel with Dan, I would just be like copying everything. I'll just be mimicking.
He came in.
I'm mad too.
During the impeachment. It was like midnight, and I forget what witness was the next day. Anyway, he's like, calls me, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm laying in bed." And he's like, "Get dressed. We're going to cloakroom." And he wasn't drinking, and I didn't drink a lot, but it was cool to have someone that you could, because again, it's stressful. Not everything's going your way, so it's good to have someone that you can talk to and fight a battle with together.
No, that's awesome. I'd love to see it in action, watching you guys do your thing. Dan, let's talk money and business reality of the game. Talk to me.
All right. The most frequent question I get is, how much is it going to cost, right? And again, and we talked about this the last episode, but I don't think it's been published yet. A primary difference between criminal cases and civil cases is usually in criminal cases, not always, but usually in criminal cases, it's a flat fee. Usually in civil cases, it's an hourly fee, right? And that's for a reason. And the main reason is, if a client runs out of money in the middle of the trial or right before the trial, you're stuck like Chuck. The state court judges ain't going to let you out, and federal court judges ain't damn sure ain't going to let you out.
Has that happened to you before?
Oh yeah, it's happened. And if I was paid every cent that the contract called for over 42 years, we wouldn't be having any conversation, much less this conversation. So you kind of consciously or subconsciously you recognize that, but the amount of a retainer, I said, is going to be a function of a bunch of different variables. Number one, how complex, how time consuming, how difficult the case is. That's the biggest one. Number two, how much I want the case, right? I don't take every case that comes in. I just don't. I don't know any good lawyer that does. And so on a case that I really want, I shouldn't be saying this, but I'm going to, on a case that's really attractive, that I think I can win with a client I'm going to like, that I got in front of a good judge, I'm probably going to charge a smaller fee than I know the client's going to be difficult. When the judge is an asshole, that the prosecutor's difficult, I can set my own fee, and they can go from $750 an hour to $1,400 an hour, right? What the market will bear is also a factor in my fees. So all of those things go into the price of it. But the more I stay in this business, the more I realize is my happiness is not tied to the fee, right? My happiness, my joy in life, whatever, is at least as tied to the outcome I get from my client as to the fee I'm getting from my client, if that makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense. And they don't really teach you the business side, huh, in law school. Can you explain what that's like?
They don't teach you any business in law school.
Yeah,
right?
I was just that is curious.
Aaron, do the math on that. It's a bunch of law school professors that have never practiced in their entire fucking life.
Is
right?
it? I figure the professors were like former lawyers. I don't know.
Yeah.
No, they're current lawyers, and they're trial ad lawyers, but for the most part, a full-time professor, as opposed to an adjunct professor or an trial advocacy or criminal, whatever. They've never practiced, right? They wouldn't know running the business side of it from Adam's off ox. So, no, they don't teach you that. And if they tried to teach you that, they wouldn't have the skill set. With me, I had the advantage of working for Mr. Haynes's firm, but I'm still managing my business side of it every freaking day. And it's unpredictable. There's no steady income stream. What my operating account looks today may bear no resemblance, for better or for worse, than what it looks like on January 1st. So that's a lot, right? That's a lot of work, a lot of worry, a lot of angst.
TJ Pony, what have you learned about the business of law since you've been practicing?
Let me answer for him, then he can answer. The primary thing is we don't charge enough.
Yeah, exactly right. You usually find that out a couple weeks in. Yeah, that was. It's funny because as a prosecutor, you don't deal with that.
Yeah.
You go to work and you get an email with a new list of cases that are assigned to you, and you're getting paid the same thing. And it's your job to work the cases until you either resolve them or you get moved from that position and they go to somebody else. So really a lot of what I've learned regarding the business element, I don't deal with the finances or things like that. I do deal with bringing cases in from time to time, and as well as getting the fees in and things like that. And so I've watched Dan and client meetings, and you've really got to counterbalance the ethics portion of it, right? Because you can't be so interested in making a sale that you overpromise and overstate what you're able to do for a client. And I think that's a really based on, I don't think, I'm not calling any specific lawyer out, but I have, when you're in the beauty contest, I do hear from time to time what other lawyers tell people, and, saying that you're going to get the case dismissed immediately, or saying the judge, so the case is going to get thrown out, things like that in an effort to make a sale. I've learned that that's a really short-sighted way to try and get a case, because ultimately when that doesn't happen, it's just going to create problems down the road.
It's very interesting.
So yeah, just really managing expectations and just confidently and calmly showing that you're capable of handling whatever issues they have.
Let me ask both of you this, and I'll start with Teaser Pony. Have you ever taken a pro bono case, and why?
I have not taken a pro bono case. We have quoted reasonable fees for people based on cases that we believe in, people that we think need help. So I've never worked completely for free, but we have reduced our fees significantly so that we can make our expertise accessible to certain people.
It's very tough balance, I'm sure. What about you, Dan? I mean, in your 42 years, have you taken?
I have. The most notable one was the Branch Davidian trial. But what people don't understand about pro bono is, and we get these all the time, it's going to be a high-profile case. You know what? My rent doesn't change. My employees aren't going to take a pay cut. My mortgage isn't getting smaller because it's a high-profile case, right? And what they also don't understand is my time is money, right? I'm literally billing by the hour. I'm getting paid to work effectively by the hour. And I get the desperation, and I get understand the idea that they're innocent, so someone should come to their aid. But I don't think they go to their doctor and say, hey, I'm sick and it's not my fault. Will you do this for free? I don't think they go to their surgeon and say, I have cancer and it's not my fault, but can you do this for free? When their car is wrecked, they don't go to the body shop and say, my car is wrecked, but it was the other guy's fault. Will you pay it? Look, is it a profession? Sure. It's also a business, and I can't stay in a profession if my business doesn't allow me to do that.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question that a lot of business owners and professionals across different industries deal with. Dan, I'm actually curious about this for you. Friends, family, people in your life, when they're in trouble and that they can't help you and it's going to be time consuming, how do you go about dealing if you're going to help them or not when it's someone that you have like some kind of relationship with or some kind of affection?
If it's friends or family?
Friends or family.
The answer is I don't. I don't want to represent a really good friend with rare exception or family, because I don't want to jeopardize my friendship or my family relationship with. If my wife or my daughter or our grandson or my son got charged with a DWI or an assault or whatever, there's no way I'd represent him, right? It's just not healthy for the relationship or for the family relationship. I'd get him to a good lawyer. I might help pay that good lawyer, but I don't want to sit down at Thanksgiving dinner if my son is on probation because I didn't do the job that he wanted me to do, right?
Yeah. No, that's complicated. That's interesting stuff. So moving forward, sentencing and aftermath. Can you give us a little breakdown on how you humanize clients and judges at sentencing?
You know, and Anthony might feel a little different, but humanizing a client at sentencing in front of a judge is harder in my view than humanizing a client and sentencing in front of a jury, because judges see this shit all day long, right? And the argument, Judge, he shouldn't be viewed or shouldn't be evaluated based upon one bad decision or one series of decisions, that falls on deaf ears with judges, right? Because that's all they do in federal court, or a large part of their time. It's like there's hardly a novel argument you can make in front of a judge that's going to move them emotionally, because they've seen it over and over and over again. So it's easier to humanize or mitigate the sentence, in my view, in front of a jury than it is for a judge, because I think a jury will focus on the human aspect of it more than a judge will, who dishes out. You know, a judge can sit back and dish out 4 years or 20 years or 40 years all day long, and it's called Wednesday, right? And with a jury, I think they're going to think about it a little more. They may not give you the result that you like, but because it's a new experience, I think they tend to be more emotionally involved in it than a judge who does it all day long.
No, I agree with Dan, and I think people, just civilians, typically recognize that time is long. When they hear 5 years, 10 years, that is a long time. They're not taking parole into account. They're not supposed to try and compute when a defendant would, in a state court case. In federal court cases, the judge will handle sentencing, but in state court cases, they're not supposed to try and guess how parole will apply. So that I think that they do really take the time to consider what the appropriate number is, and I think that a year in prison in the regular person's eyes is harsh. So everyone counts.
In terms of federal sentencings, look, we've got a guy. It's no surprise. He's our secret weapon named Brent Newton on federal matters. We've talked about the sentencing guidelines before, but Brent was on the federal sentencing guidelines committee. He knows the guidelines cold, but and he helps us with our sentencing memos. The other thing is, if I am presenting a sentencing package or a sentencing memo to a judge, he's been there before, right? And I want to get to the heart of the matter. I don't want to be all dramatic and a flair for the emotional and all that. I want to be as logical, efficient, and respectful as I can, because, again, it's Wednesday for them. They don't want to see me dog and pony show and talk about, the hard background of my client, unless it really was a hard background of my client, something exceptional. So I try to be, as counterintuitive as this sounds, I try to be a little more businesslike in front of a federal judge than I am even in front of a state court judge.
That makes sense. What happens after conviction, Dan? Can you walk
Nothing
us through
good.
that process?
Nothing good. Obviously there's a direct appeal after sentencing, but I don't really want to get into the draconian impact in state court versus federal court versus mediums versus low versus high. The harsh reality of conviction and sentencing is it's going to be the worst day or the worst period of their life, right? And there's nothing a lawyer can do or say to really mitigate that. The best we can do is try to prepare them for that. I mean, just today, we had a very long conversation with a client, and it was certainly our advice that they agree to plead guilty, which is not exactly what they wanted to do. But when you're discussing, look, do you want to do 6 months in a halfway house, which is probably what's going to happen if we plead, or do you want to do 5 years in prison if we go to trial and you get convicted, which is probably going to happen. So those are really hard conversations to have with clients, and they get defensive and you get defensive, and the only way to have those conversations, at least in my experience, is to have them over a series of days or hours. Because if you sit down and say, listen, you stupid idiot, I've been doing this 42 years, you're gonna go to prison for 5 years if you don't do what I say, that's never going to end well, right? So you have to have those conversations early. Frankly, the older I get, the sooner I try to have those conversations. But it's like discussing radiation or oncology or surgery. They're not good discussion topics to have with clients.
Yeah, this is really fascinating stuff here, Dan. What is that like for you? The conversations you've had to help families prepare, maybe.
Yeah, well, it goes back to managing expectations, and a lot of that I've learned through working with Dan. That's when I was a prosecutor, the conversation is typically with the victim or the victim's family if the victim's deceased, and you're explaining the risks involved in going to trial, and that a jury could go the other way, right? But the biggest difference as a defense attorney is you develop a really close relationship with your clients. You might not be best friends, but you're their counselor, and they rely on you and they trust you. And so when they're convicted and when sentencing's coming up or happening, it's a tough conversation to have. Dan has, from what I've seen and learned so far, has displayed a really good ability to recognize that this is an extremely stressful situation for the person, right? Because I think it's really easy for lawyers to we know what's right, so you should listen to us because we have the right answer. When in reality, you're asking that person to make a really hard decision. And so I don't, now that he's saying it out loud, yeah, the conversations do get broken up over time, and it's sort of a slow realization and understanding.
I think another thing that's lost on clients more often than it should be is I don't like advising a client to plead guilty, right? I don't like pleading a client guilty. Yeah. I didn't go to law school to learn how to be the best plea bargain lawyer in the courthouse, right? That is not why I went to law school. At the same time, and the statistics bear this out, the vast majority of cases are resolved through pleas, right? We try percentage-wise as many cases as any lawyer I know, which in the big picture of things is probably still relatively small. We probably try 30% of our cases when most lawyers probably try 5% of their cases or whatever statistically. But it sucks when I go and play. I don't feel good at it, and it's not about how I feel, but it is about I have true compassion and I give a shit about what happens to my lawyer. And when we get 6 months in a community correctional facility versus 5 years, we ain't high-fiving each other on the way out going, woohoo, that was great. Right. Or we only got 10 years when they were looking at 40. Yeah. Right? That's just, that's not a win.
Yeah, we recognize it's a great result, all things considered, but yeah, it is not comparable to getting an acquittal. And so,
have you ever cried after a result, Dan?
I've certainly cried on the inside.
Yeah.
And I've been very bothered after, a handful of times after doing this for as long as I have, maybe half a dozen times where I thought, what in the fuck did that jury do? I mean, which certainly not to say I always agree with it, but every few years there's a situation where I leave the courthouse and go, how could they have possibly done that? Luckily, that's the very small minority, and the system isn't perfect, and it's not built around my expectations or my desires. But yeah, when I lose a case that I feel like I shouldn't have lost, it bothers the shit out of me. No. I have felt lucky after winning, but I've never gone, oh God, I just walked a guilty man. Yeah. No. Because the truth is, Tommy, the system works a lot more than the people, it's the injustice system, it's not money bias, and certainly our system has its fault. But by and large, in my experience, particularly in jury trials, they do what they're supposed to do the vast majority of the time.
Yeah, I mean, this stuff is very, very fascinating, and I love the insight, and I appreciate you guys, sharing that. I want to talk a little bit more about the client experience, Dan. What does it actually feel like to be arrested from the process to booking?
Being arrested is degrading, humiliating, depressing. It's a terrible experience, right? So let's just walk you through what happens. if you're driving home on Friday night at midnight and you get stopped for DWI or whatever, and you get arrested, you're going to be taken to processing, which you can be in jail for processing, which means you're lined up in a long cage with other humans. That can take 10, 12, 14 hours. On a weekend, if you're really unlucky, you won't even get in front of a magistrate till later that day or the following day, and then the judge sets a bond, and maybe the paperwork gets lost, or maybe you get out Monday morning, and then when you get out Monday morning at 7 a.m., you find out when you're walking out you've got a court appearance at 9. All that stuff sucks, and the bigger the city, the longer the process is, and the more, in my experience, the more dehumanizing it is. It is not a fun process at all. Even worse on the federal side, which we've talked about, if you're involved in a big boy federal case, the agents are going to come to your house at 3:30 or 4 in the morning with all their toys and their SWAT uniforms and 5 or 6 blacked out Suburbans and with all their guns displayed, and kick your door down at 4 o'clock in the morning, and every neighbor for 6 blocks is going to realize it's a terrible experience. It's a fucking horrible experience. And it's not one person that I've ever had as a client that's been arrested that said, it wasn't that bad. It was no big deal.
Yeah.
It's a terrible experience.
Had some that get used to it.
Yeah, that's true.
No, there's so much gold in here, and we're not going to cover all the rest of this. So I'm going to rapid fire through some of this because we've been going for a little bit of it. But what, Teaser Pony, give me one big red flag to avoid from a criminal defense attorney. Like if you see one, what's a big red flag for a client
in terms
to
of
avoid?
hiring one?
In terms of hiring one.
Overstating their ability to get your case resolved, making promises, making guarantees, and if they charge you, if the retainer's too good to be true, it's just that.
Yeah.
The other one that always annoys me is, I know the judge, or I know the prosecutor. Bullshit. I mean, I know. I have known as many prosecutors as any lawyer, and I have known as more judges than almost any lawyer. And anybody that touts their relationship with a prosecutor or a relationship with a judge is just trying to get your money. Because I've known a bunch of judges and a bunch of prosecutors, and do they respect me and do they acknowledge my ability? Yeah. But are they going to dismiss a case because I'm on it? No. That's bullshit.
What's the worst? I like this one. I want to knock this one out. But what's the worst advice people get from friends and family after they get arrested?
Doesn't matter who you hire. Just hire the first guy that comes along. Don't spend a bunch of money on a lawyer. They're all the same. Or don't spend a bunch of money on the first lawyer. We'll go see how he does. And if he ain't any good, we'll get another one.
So in this little segment towards the end, we're just going to talk about maybe, Dan, some televised sports that you didn't even know were a thing. Let's have some fun.
This came about a couple of weeks ago. I think it was an off weekend for UT football or something. But for the first sport I saw televised was a cornhole tournament. I had no idea that those things were televised. First off, I can't bring myself to play the game cornhole simply because of the name. I can't do it. But the idea that they televise these games of people throwing a sack into a fucking hole, and they got these NASCAR-like looking shirts on where they're sponsored by. It's like, this is a thing? So I started screwing around, and then I found out, actually the same day, I saw a Golden Tee, which is virtual golf. Yeah. It was a televised Golden Tee tournament. And how bereft of fucking life do you have to watch a Golden Tee televised tournament? And then I found out, so I started Googling around. They have televised pinball tournaments. I did not know that. And then I got on Claude. Here we go, using AI. But they actually televised a wife carrying a tournament. And ESPN has covered the world championships.
Holy shit.
Did they have a competitive slapping?
Yeah, I know about that.
Do they regulate the wife size at all, or how do they keep that?
weight classes? Weight classes?
Competitive slapping, which is exactly what it sounds like. Opponents take turns slapping each other. And then my favorite, extreme ironing. This is a televised thing where people watch. I mean, have you not gotten an erection for the past generation where it gets to the point where you want to watch extreme ironing? My God, what a country.
That's fucking hilarious. I didn't know about the extreme ironing competition, but whoever wins that, like, hit me up. I might need to just borrow those services. Competitive slapping, actually, the slap. Dana White, he invested in a slapping, competition.
Did it go anywhere?
He says it does really big numbers online, and it's not something you sit down and you watch on your
it's
TV,
short clips.
It's the clips of somebody getting slapped, like, do big numbers, but it's
the competitors are like big.
Huge.
Their hands look like hams.
Yeah. Scary. Any extra added thing not on this list, teaser pony, that maybe you've come across?
How do you guys feel about pickleball?
For people that can't play tennis.
Well,
it's a social thing. I get it, but
I think it's retarded.
The ball, it's a wiffle ball. It's a plastic ball. I don't get the draw. Fine.
No,
It's wasting tennis
do you know what
space.
pisses me off? They took the basketball court out of Lifetime, made it a pickleball court, and back in Plano, where we're from. So it sucks.
Well, I'm an AA, as I've said, and there's some sort of magical relationship between AA and pickleball. And I don't know why that connects so well, but I think it's all bullshit. The pickleball, not AA.
I just think when people get overly competitive and intense about pickleball, that's laughable.
I know, dude. It's
It's
like, come on,
take a step back. This is a beer drinking event.
Clearly, you've never been to a wife carrying competition.
No, I have not.
Well, we went to that place at the podcast thing where they had where they had the pickleball.
I can't broadcast that. I went to that event. I'm gonna lose aura. That's negative aura.
That was, I don't want to say the gayest thing ever. But I don't mean that in a heterosexual, homosexual way. It was just the most retarded event ever.
And I don't mean that in a retarded or like kind of good way.
We gotta save this for Cogdell Law After. This is Cogdell Law After Dark. This is our new podcast.
We went to this thing. It was a podcast seminar, and we didn't realize it. And we paid actual money to attend.
I'm not gonna lie. I kind of, when y'all were all over there, I'm at the office. I was laughing internally, like, what?
Well, but it was all the spoken word podcasters, right? Which are you talk about people that couldn't get laid at a women's prison with a fistful of pardons. That was this group, and some of them had 117 followers and shit, right? And we roll in with our numbers, and they're like looking at us like we're fucking Joe Rogan or some shit, because by comparison, we were Joe Rogan, and I thought, we actually paid money to surround ourselves with these idiots. I mean, they live in their mom's basement. They're driving their dad's 68 Crown Vic. It's like, good God.
Oh, man. Well, I think that's a good place to end it.
Yeah.
Don't cancel us, Podcast Network. We will be keynote speakers next year for you. Appreciate your time. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.